special funds. Also, not part of the $12 million is $2 million that'll come in from transient guest tax. That's the money collected for hotel room nights within the Village West area. That's been a nice significant portion of dollars that have helped retire the star bonds over the year. Now that comes back in. Now that's a restricted fund, and as I've noted, it goes for tourism, attracting visitors through marketing, advertising, and support of those functions. Previously, we've used most of our transient guest tax in the community that goes toward the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and a little bit for some other activities we've had, some downtown hotel support, such like that we've used, as it is restricted. But the current amount of money that comes into the transient guest tax is $1 million. This takes that total to $3 million. How are we looking at our star bonds? And how's this budget really prepared, and what am I putting in front of you? Well, I'm recommending that we come with a very prudent fiscal decisions, and I know you all have been that way, and I appreciate that with star bonds because, well, it's tempting to look ahead and say, let's start to spend some of that money before we get it and do some things. That's not been in the direction I've received. We've been waiting till it comes. And as we look ahead, we have many things to address, and a lot of those are putting our own house in order. As we look at what we've done over the years, we've deferred a lot of capital equipment, a lot of our infrastructure, because we just couldn't afford to take care of a lot of those things at the rate we should have. We need to rebuild our fund balance. I've stood before here, and our previous administrator stood before when we had a fund balance of less than 1%. That's pretty low. And our targeted fund balance is 10%, and when we started to make steps for that last year, we still have a long ways to go. We have special funds that we either borrowed from or deferred payments to over the years. Those are all things we need to take care of. And of course, our employees are ones that we had a series of years where we froze their pay or we even decreased their pay through our furloughs, and we need to continue to address that as we started last year. We have future debt payments. These are payments that it was necessary in order to keep up some of the work we were doing. We did more leasing, more debt service. The unfortunate side of debt is that eventually the bill comes due. And as we've looked at that a few weeks ago, as we were going through some of our planning, we recognized that in 2018 and 19, our obligations to that debt service increased quite a bit, more than what we have in our current revenue source going to that. We also have a property tax lid that the state put on us. We believe it's manageable in the way it's set out, but we haven't dealt with that yet. And while we don't plan to increase our mill rate in future years, we do have this limitation that if something were to happen and we needed to, when you want to put a mill back on, it will be a more difficult process. Also, I can't present the budget without thinking about what's going on in the economic climate. We have a presidential campaign election coming up this year, so we will have a new president. That's going to change things. Hopefully it'll all be positive as we move forward, but it does create some uncertain times. Additionally, on the world climate, particularly what's happened in Europe with Great Britain, that changes things that will have an impact here locally. I don't think it'll be drastic in Kansas, but it will have impact on us as we are a very strong manufacturing center in how we export items around the world. That kind of leads me to the star bonds, and they're coming in 2017. And that's where I say it's important we look at what we do to put our house in order and how we rely upon that money. Because unlike property tax that we go through and we've been largely relying upon over the years, we go through and we set the property tax rate. We know where that's at. And outside of making a calculation as to what portion we think will be delinquent each year, we pretty much have a good handle that's going to happen. These are sales tax dollars. None of them will be collected. The largest portions of these will be collected in the summer of next year and in November and December. So this budget is really one that takes a look at the perspective of you need to earn the money before you start spending the money, and then you work with it from there. I also wanted to touch again on the dedicated sales tax portion of this. This was approved in 2010. It's a 3/8 sales tax. It expires in 2020. With the new star bonds going to it, it's going to generate $9.3 million. This was a great fund source that did help us for years. It helped provide a lot in public safety. We've increased a little bit more in the infrastructure. And with the new star bond portion, meaning $2 million coming in this fund is really paid by people outside of Wyandotte County. It's a good sales tax. It's one we should think about how we want to work forward with this and renewing it in 2020, because it really brings in outside dollars into our community for people that are using our infrastructure and resources. And it's a very important part of our budget if we were to lose it. All right, with that little preface, as we come into it, I'm going to have Reginald Lindsay, our budget manager, come up, and he's going to give you the numbers, and then we will proceed to talk about initiatives after that. Reggie?
Thank you, Doug. The 2017 proposed budget is a $345 million budget that funds over 31 funds and also funds over 200 services. Our main sources of revenue are property tax, sales tax, and franchise tax. This year, sales tax is at 19%. Last year, it was 15% of the pie, and that represents the $12 million that we're getting in STAR bond revenue. Expenditures, which are also $345 million, the largest expenditure that we have is public safety and public works, and then next coming in is community services. Our bond and interest fund is 10%. Last year, it was 15% of the pie, and this year it's 10%. It's dropped 5% as a piece of the pie. Our city general fund budget is a $152 million budget that is balanced on both the expenditure side and the revenue side. Sales tax is our largest portion of revenue. Coming in second is franchise tax and then property tax. Sales tax used to come in second at 16% and has grown due to the STAR bonds that we will receive. Expenditures, our largest portion of expenditures going out, or our personnel is 69%, and then our services at 13%. CMIP this year is going to be up $1.5 million. Our county general fund is a $59 million balanced budget where expenses and revenue account for each other. Our property tax is 58% of the pie, and other taxes are 17% of the pie, and sales tax are 11% of the pie. Last year, sales tax were 9% of the pie, and this increase of 2% represents a little over $1 million that we'll get from STAR bonds on the county general side. On the expenditure side, personnel represents 68% of the budget, while services are 24% of the budget. That's a $14 million budget, and $6 million of that budget goes to pay for inmate housing and inmate medical in the sheriff's department. Also in a CMIP here is up $500,000 over last year. Other funds represent 29 other funds that don't include the city and the county general fund. The largest here is the sewer system, and then also the debt service, and then EMS and dedicated sales tax. Dollar here represents a household that is within the USD 500. There are 6 different taxing entities within the unified government, and 48 cents of your dollar goes to Wyandotte County, and 52 cents goes to other taxing entities within Wyandotte County. I'll turn it back over to Doug now.
Thanks, Reggie. Okay, so I move forward to build the budget. Factored into this, addressing citizen survey comments. We had a very good survey come in, provided a lot of information to us. Taking the guidance from you all as we move through strategic planning that we did last fall, up through series of meetings, standing committees that we go through, taking that input into our strategic planning this spring. Incorporated information from the mayor's listening tour. 8 different sessions that were held across the city. A lot of people came out, expressed their input. Also, factors I've noted from prudent fiscal management. All right, what's the first step on this? Major STAR initiatives that we built in, and I've tried to hit a lot of different areas. And you'll see through the budget, we put stars by certain things as we go through. These are all ones where we have some star money put into them. They go into property tax relief, street and neighborhood infrastructure, our Stabilization, Occupation, and Revitalization Initiative, or otherwise the acronym of SOAR, which is our new blight initiative. Planning and Economic Development, Public Safety, Community Services, Parks and Rec, Communications, Capital Equipment and Projects, repayment of the special funds, and rebuilding the fund balance. So we feel like we've hit a lot of areas with the STAR bonds. We hit more areas with the budget overall. And as we go through the presentation, you'll see the STAR. That either indicates we have some STAR money in it, or some of them in some cases are all STAR money as it goes through it. First item up here is property tax rate. As I noted earlier, only part of the $12 million comes toward the general fund, and that's money that we haven't earned yet. It's money that will be coming in next year. So with this budget, I'm recommending a 1 mil reduction and move it down 1 mil on the city side while we see that money come in and take care of our house first before we start to make larger reductions. However, I've tried to develop a roadmap to lead us forward as we go into this and look at how we can make further mill reductions as we go through this, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Now I'm going to have my 3 assistant county administrators come forward, and they're going to walk through the specific initiatives that we're doing in each of the departments and set that out. So first up for that is Melissa Munn.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. I'm very happy to be with you tonight as we discuss STAR bonds. As I mentioned to staff earlier today, I was a graduate student at the University of Kansas when this was going through the legislature, so it's kind of unique for me to have come full circle. So tonight, the section that I'm going to start out covering is Public Works, Streets, and Infrastructure. Our emphasis here was really related to a lot of the work that the citizen survey was telling us that it felt was important to them. So we've enhanced dollars going to street and neighborhood resurfacing projects as well as traffic signals. We've also added in additional dollars to our bike routes and safe routes to schools, as well as sidewalk investments. And additionally, continue the work along Leavenworth Road, which is a huge project for the community. In the area of wastewater, another one of our larger areas of capital investment, we'll start 2017 in a big work toward the Wyandotte plant design and planning project, which removes the actual temporary plant that was only supposed to be there for a little while. It's been there 10 years now. I'm happy to have sold that to you when I was in Gardner. And so Trenton's going to be really happy when he doesn't have to deal with the Wyandotte plant anymore. The nice other part here you'll see is we continue to work in our Fairfax area, enhancing that part of our business park with our force main replacement. And lastly, we'll continue the work on our combined sewer overflow compliance, which everyone has heard about throughout the community through a series of meetings, and we'll continue to hear about as we go through the next few months before we file our work plan with the federal government. Oops, and stormwater, final year of Turkey Creek. There's a lot of great things in here. So that will be a big wrap up on a large major project in our community. And then on the facility side, for those of us who have ever been out to the annex on the last day of the month, we are enhancing parking out there. So that's the big one under here. There are several other equipment purchases that are really critical for staff to do good work and meet the needs of residents. As Doug highlighted earlier, we are going to continue work in 17 on our SOAR initiative. Through a lot of work through the first 6 months of this year, staff's identified some critical areas of need that can be addressed through the budget process. We are looking at doubling the number of properties that we process through the tax sale in 2017. There'll be 1,000 additional properties that'll move through the tax sale. We're working to change the culture in our community towards property tax. Additionally, we'll continue to work on cross-departmental data integration, so there's some dollars in here to help us be able to do that, to understand better how to fight blight through data. Looking at a zoning enforcement officer, which we haven't had through a number of years because of the economic downturn, code enforcement officers, additional demolition, mowing, and then community outreach to help people understand the work that we're doing through SOAR in their individual neighborhoods. Also an additional animal services officer, an intern for our office to help support the work, and then looking at our animal facility and determining what we need going into the future. Last slide that I'm covering tonight is on planning and economic development. There's been a lot of conversation since I've been here in the last year about the Northeast Master Plan. This plan funds the Northeast Master Plan, or this budget funds the Northeast Master Plan. Additionally, we've heard a lot of concern and frustration over the zoning code. We're proposing to start rewriting that in the second half of 17. There's also dollars in for the LIST Catalytic Urban Pre-Development Fund. And was I supposed to cover all the dollars on these, Doug? Okay, that's fine, okay. And then the big thing here for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, as Doug highlighted earlier with the STAR revenues for the tourism tax, they will receive up to an additional $250,000+ to help promote tourism in our community, which in turn helps our sales tax. And now I am going to turn the next portion over to Gordon Criswell to cover public safety.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, you probably have seen from Reggie's earlier slide that public safety is a significant cost center in our organization, and these next few slides represent our effort at understanding that public safety is very important in our community. So I'll start with the police sheriff field operations study. We hope and intend to get that study underway later this summer. This is one of the 6 or 7 studies that you all commissioned us to do last year, I think. And we've just about got them all done. So we hope through the study of sheriff and police operations, we can eke out some additional efficiencies in field operations. And that study will give us some ideas on how we might accomplish that. We had a recommendation from the police chief concerning tow lot operations. We are recommending in this budget that we get into the tow lot operations business as a unified government. We believe that we can, one, generate additional revenue from operating a tow lot. More importantly, we believe we can provide a much higher level of customer services to those individuals who unfortunately wind up getting their vehicles towed. And lastly, we believe operating the tow lot ourselves will afford greater accountability from a legal standpoint for those vehicles that need to be cleared because they're involved in some type of legal process. So we are beginning the planning for that activity in 2017. You're familiar with the fire services study that's been completed. I won't go into a lot about that except to say that those 3 bullets there represent the initial steps that we need to take to start what we consider very thoughtful planning and design work around some of the fire service recommendations. And so we need to have those 3 items in place to begin working on the recommendations that came out of that study. Community corrections, we're proposing an additional case manager due to the fact that DUI law in Kansas has changed, and there's been an uptick in our community in individuals charged with DUI offenses. We believe that the case manager will help, one, provide the kind of counseling for those individuals such that they don't repeat, and 2, sort of in an indirect way, keep non-threatening people, if you will, out of our county jail, which has additional other kinds of savings as well. Lastly, on this slide, the district attorney is has expressed some retention and burnout concerns in his shop, and so we are recommending an additional attorney for the district attorney's office. The detention facility is another one of the studies that we completed, and we have some recommendations that came out of that study. One of those recommendations was to bring our inmates who were farmed out back into the detention center and capture the cost that we incur by bringing them back into our facility. However, that will require in 2016 the addition of 7 deputies, and in 2018 another 8 deputies to support bringing our farm-out inmates back into our detention facility. That was one of the significant recommendations that came out of the jail feasibility study. Another important recommendation that came out of that study was we needed to quickly do something about the elevators that transport both our detention officers and the inmates from a safety perspective. And so this budget contemplates doing something with the elevator in our detention facility. Hopefully the budget will allow us to repair the other half of the roof that we repaired in prior years. And so the budget contemplates that activity as well. We've also completed and received recommendations from the consultants concerning the juvenile complex. We basically need to move our juveniles out of our adult detention facility, and so this slide represents the planning and design work that we will do in 2017, hopefully with construction to start in 2018. This slide just represents our recommendation to get us back on a regular replacement schedule for our rolling stock in public safety. Because of the downturn in the economy, we've had to delay our replacement schedule of vehicles. And we know that, our vehicles get a lot of miles put on them. We also know our public safety vehicles are a reflection of us. And so this proposed budget recommends these additional rolling stock in both sheriff, police, and fire. I would bring your attention to animal services, which is now called the Animal Services Unit in the police department. This budget recommends some additional equipment in that department to support the work that the animal services officers are doing. Lastly, community services. This slide really represents some of the quality of life activities that occur in our community by a number of these agencies. All of them except for the replacement of voting machines have been significantly impacted by either reductions or eliminations of state funding coming out of Topeka. So we are recommending additional dollars into these areas. I would like to highlight Wyandotte Mental Health. The work that the mental health professionals do actually help us save money because we aren't putting people in jail who don't need to be in jail because they have some type of mental illness crisis or situation. They go a very long way in helping us assess and determine whether or not someone really needs to be in secure detention like the jail. The other item of note is we are replacing our voting machines. This, from a dollar standpoint, is about a $1.3 million expenditure. In our early meeting today with department heads, Bruce Newby reminded me that we are using 1995 vintage computers for our voting, and they just don't work as well as they ought to. So with elections coming up, we thought it important to get this in place fairly quickly. With that, I'll turn it over to Joe, who's going to talk about other operational activities.
Good. Thank you, Gordon. First one I want to talk about is our parks. This is an area that was certainly identified as a needs improvement area in our citizen survey. And so one of the things that we started this year is, as a reminder to you, is our Parks Master Plan. So what we'll be doing with that is kind of assessing what we have, asking the community what it is that they'd like to have in our parks, and then in the implementation phase is figuring out how to get that done. So we've set some money aside in the capital budget to talk about implementation activities in 2017 based on the master plan work that's being done this year. We're going to continue with our mowing and weed control. Again, that's a pretty high complaint area. I know it is for you all, and I know it is through our 311 and other places. And we want to continue with capital improvements as well. One that I want to point out is the ADA accessible playground. We currently don't have one in our community. And other communities are opening them and have had them for a long time. And we feel like this is the time for Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County to have an ADA accessible playground located in our community. And again, with as Gordon mentioned, rolling stock, the tractors and mowers that the Parks Department are using is probably way past their useful life and needs to be replaced as well. One of the other items in the citizen survey that we received pretty negative remarks from was on communications in general. So in this year, in 2016, we'll have 2 editions of the Citizens newsletter sent out mailed out to our citizens. Next year, we're proposing to have 3. We feel like that's a good tool for us to communicate with citizens, and it's something that gets pretty high marks from folks. So we want to add another newsletter for next year. We also would like to add a staff person to assist with our UGTV and its capacity. Right now, we don't have a lot of programming on there. We want to add more programming to UGTV, and we also want to include the planning and zoning meetings, either broadcast live or certainly recorded and then kept as part of the process. Planning and zoning is a first place where a lot of policy decisions get made, a lot of projects move forward, and we think that'll really complement having that in the library as well as the commission meetings and the standing committees. It seems to make sense from a transparent and open part of our government. Last one I'd like to talk about is the open data and innovation activities. I've listed on this slide a lot of things that we're proposing to fund this year that we consider business process improvement, customer service friendly, and just basically innovative ideas. But I want to point out a couple of those. One is the 311 mobile app development. I think you saw a presentation on this a few months ago. So you can call the call center now and ask for information or register a complaint. Now you can, in 2016, you can go online and do the same thing. In 2017, what we want to do is have a true mobile application that goes on your smartphone that can be used, give us a third option for people to enter information into that system. And we really think that 311 is going to be a hub for us to look at putting future resources into what our community needs are. And so this will just enhance our ability to gain that information and, again, give the citizens another opportunity or another way to provide information for us that we can use. The second one I wanted to touch on was the CAD system, the computer-aided dispatch system that's being rolled out right now for our public safety departments. In 2017, as part of our open data portal, our open data initiative, we want to try to add CAD data that's being collected. It's going to be very rich data. It's going to be very friendly data to work with, and we want to try to put that as part of our open data initiative as we start to add more things into what we consider open data for the unified government. With that, I'll turn it back to Doug.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, so from here, let's talk about some of the other things we're doing, as I mentioned earlier, about putting our house in order. We put through some of the initiatives, repaying money to their water pollution control fund of $1 million. That still leaves us $1.7 million remaining, but puts us in pretty good shape regarding that. On the employee health fund, recommending putting $2.4 million into this account. That puts us about $500,000 over what we originally deferred in investment years ago into this fund. However, as you all are aware, this fund is one that's struggling. It's right on the edge of being balanced month after month. So I want to put the additional money in here as we move forward, and there are some other program changes we'll look at to really make this fund look healthy as we go forward. In workers' compensation, this $2.2 million amount will completely cover what was deferred into these payments. Instead of what we were doing, just trying to cover these as they popped up, we really need to get all the money funded into this account now. On employee compensation, recommending 2% that goes into employees for January of 2017, and then also that the employer portion of the health insurance premiums be increased by 14%. Rebuilding our fund balance. In 2016, I presented a budget to you all that recommended a $3.8 million fund balance. And at that time, I was feeling pretty good about it, thinking, oh, $3.8 million, we're building that thing up. Recommending this year, so apples to apples, I'm working with what was adopted and presented a year ago to what I'm presenting now, $9.4 million. So about 3 times where we're at. This is still about half of what we need to be in this fund. The little orange line on top of that indicates our 10% target for where we want to be for this, but it does make a significant step. And really, we're able to do this from what we're carrying over, what we're projecting now to be a healthy fund balance at the end of 2016, so the actual amended 2016 will be much higher than what was adopted. And as each year as we go through it, we are able to save some money and work through it, and I would hope that at the next year this time, maybe we can be a little higher than where this is showing. All right, where's the STAR bond money going? This is good news that we haven't talked much about. But as we continue to do our projections on the payout of STAR bonds, we believe we will have them paid out by December of this year, meaning that they will be closing and we will get that cash amount money in 2016. We think that'll be a little over $5 million. And that's because it's not 1/12 of a share, but it's because there's a lot of reserve accounts that are set up when you do large bond issuance that have to go over 20 years. So if you're ever short in a given year, you can draw back out of those reserve accounts. Once we pay them off, we'll be able to get that money. It's not for sure, but it's pretty solid that we think this is where we'll be. But I'm recommending that this money go to all these one-time account payments that we've talked about, into the health and benefits fund that we deferred money from, the workers' compensation fund, water pollution control, and as you recall, a portion of it goes to EMS, and then and some of the dedicated sales tax, and that's why you see the police and fire. But these are all one-time payments we can make into these accounts. If we don't get it all and it doesn't all finish out in 2016, we'll get the money, it'll come early in 2017, but right now our projections look good that it'll happen in 2016 and we can make these payments. That leaves us with $12 million that then we allocate for 2017. So where's that money going? And the way this budget projects, as you recall, as I went through and talked about, the EMS fund and the dedicated sales tax fund bring in a significant proportion of that money, and that's why you see police and fire up here as a couple of the higher money, receiving money that comes into this. Also, the dedicated fund pays toward the blight reduction that we're going to do in the neighborhoods, neighborhood streets, and neighborhood parks, so those all get a portion of that as well. And then the other $8 million or $9 million is spread out over the different areas. The property tax relief is on here, noting at $1 million, which is a little over $1 million. As we move from this, we see, as I mentioned, a one-time expenditure. So everything we listed for 2016 is one time. That makes all the $12 million come available in 2017. About half of the money that's indicated up there in the chart has some expectation that would be a reoccurring fund, such as a mill rate reduction. Once you do a mill rate reduction, that money is gone from the board. And then some of these but many of the other things that are up there, such as streets, capital projects, some of the facilities improvements, we spend that money once and then it'll be there available for us to go with next year. So I did this so we could kind of look ahead to see how that plays out, because we've been doing a lot of work on fiscal forecasting. So where are we at with 2018? So if we come into 2018, and you all have had a lot of conversation about reducing the mill rate more, so since we collect it, get our house in order, and then start to make reductions, we can move into 18 with 2 more mills. Now I note that is 3, but that's a compounding mill, meaning it's worth $3 million. So if I start with the 12, I have to deduct things that we're doing year after year. So that would be 3 mills, that would be the cumulative effort at that point. The money that's really toward the dedicated and EMS, that shows we're there with police and fire, so those kind of recur as you come into it, some of the other areas. But it still leaves you with almost $5 million that would be unallocated as we look at that and say, okay, where does that money go in 2018? And that's money that you could choose one-time projects with, could choose to do additional mill reduction with it. Or we could look at, well, I mean, obviously many things we could come to and decide that's where we expend it. I'll probably have a high recommendation along with my chief financial officer to put more money toward fund balance. So we build that up because I really look at, as we become more reliant on sales tax, it's a more volatile fund. As I said, don't spend the money before you earn it. When we look at property tax, we know we're going to get our property tax payments this next year, outside of about a 6% delinquency rate, which is down from where it was. Sales tax doesn't come in till the end of the year. We believe we'll get it, but various things can do, and when sales tax drops, it drops immediately, not a year later. So you have no time to react to it, and that means you need to have a solid fund balance to be fiscally prudent in the way you manage your money. So I believe this puts together a good roadmap for us to consider going forward. I think we have a solid budget, puts a lot of new initiatives in that you all have given us direction to work with coming into 2017. And then, like I said, then a roadmap moving forward to 2018. With that, just kind of reminder, these are all meetings that we've already had going through it all the way back to October of last year. And then coming up next week, we'll start our workshops. On Monday, we'll look at a maximum mill rate, set that, and then move forward to the additional workshops through the month and hopefully adopt the budget on July 28th. With that, that's the presentation of the budget. I will note that later tonight, during our full commission meeting, I want to recognize our budget staff who are all here tonight, and I probably would ask them to even stand up at this time, but Kathleen Von Atchen, our new Chief Financial Officer, Reggie, who was up here before, and the rest of the budget staff, would you all please stand up? These folks all work very hard as we come through several months. It's not a few weeks as they get to, but thank you very much. But they've received for the 4th year running the Distinguished Budget Award, and we'll present that during the full commission tonight.
Thank you very much. One of the things I'm going to ask the commissioners is, as you have a chance, you'll have a chance this weekend, clear your calendar this weekend as you review this budget document to walk through it. If you have any questions about it, reach out to Mr. Bach's office. He will be able to direct you to the right place to answer. Also, we'll be looking for topics that the commissioners want to make sure we discuss during budget sessions. So if you would bring those to my office, I'm going to send out an email tomorrow morning asking you or reminding you to send to my office budget topic requests. It's handy if you send those all into the office because some of the topics are quick questions, some of the topics are long conversations, and if we have as many of those as possible up front, I'll work with Mr. Bach together to figure out how we put those in and how much time his staff's going to need to prepare for that topic and how long we think that conversation is going to take based on past experience. So as you think about the budget, make notes and be sure to let my office know what topics you would like to see. We'll be collecting those. Mr. Bach?
I failed to mention, Mayor, the budget should be online now. It's on at our wykokck.org, so you can go there. It should be on our main webpage for anybody that doesn't have a hard copy of it. They can pull it up and go through it and see all the details of this. Also within that, as I've done each year, is my message delivery, which kind of goes through the highlight. It goes into more details of what's mentioned here, but it's about a 10-page document that kind of goes through a summary. I would recommend you all, if you have a chance to read through that at a minimum, it gives you a little bit more information and details on some of the things. And then, of course, we can delve into the full document from there.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane.
I don't want to wait to let my little message out there. I'm very, very concerned about the fire station that I've asked for ever since I've been here out west. So I think that we should put that on the front burner because several of the commissioners have showed interest in that too. So I don't want to wait to send it to your office. I want everybody here and everybody in the TV land to hear what I'm asking for.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. We will start on Monday, and on Monday we will have the setting of the minimum mill levy, and that's an annual event that we, whoosh, It's a big difference, and it is certainly the maximum mill levy that we need to set. We do that at the outset of the budget, and we will vote to set that. Typically, at special sessions, we do not vote, particularly unless it's announced. We are announcing there will be a vote by the commission on the maximum mill levy on Monday, and we'll have a discussion about what that maximum mill levy will be. What we set on Monday does not mean we cannot lower it. We can certainly lower it because it's the maximum, and we almost always lower it from what we set the maximum mill levy as. In fact, I think every year I've been here, we've lowered it from the maximum mill levy. But we will have that vote on Monday. That's important because if we go above that maximum mill levy, we have to repost everything by state law, and it changes our budget trajectory. So we won't be going above the maximum mill levy, and we'll be setting that next Monday. So as you come in next Monday, if you have any questions about that, be sure to reach out to Mr. Bach's office as well. All right. Anything else? That concludes our meeting. We are adjourned until 7 o'clock. Thank you.